Hey everyone. Um, I'm giving another update and about what's going on with my scans and the procedures that I have coming up. Um, and also, I just wanted to kind of continue to talk about where I'm at and what's been going on with me, what I've been thinking about, and what I've been kind of processing. Um, I got awesome feedback and very positive support from my last video, so it really encouraged me to kind of continue. I had a lot of really good conversations with my friends and family, and even some strangers about that video and the kind of the content and how it related to them in their life and where they were at. And that's exactly what I'm kind of getting at, and what I'm trying to go for is using these videos and my experience to be a mirror, to be a reflection, to once again to kind of use my story impersonally. Um, and so it was such positive reinforcement for me, and also so profound to see how and to talk through it with my friends and family and people who reached out to me, and have these conversations about how these ideas and concepts come into their lives and come into my life. I also had some people who said I didn't watch the video because it was too sad, and I said, all right, that's exactly what we were going for. Why are you sad? Why don't you want to watch it? All these things. And with that being said, I ended the video last time saying that I wanted to talk about this kind of in between and talk about what that means to me and how I've been experiencing it. And I think I want to save that because I'm still kind of processing some of that, and still experiencing some of that. And I guess today I wanted to talk about grief and loss. And I know for some people that's an immediate shutting this off. But that's something that I in the last couple of years have experienced so frequently, unfortunately. Getting my diagnosis. I got my diagnosis, and a couple months later, my grandfather died. The patriarch on my mom's side of the family passed away. A few months after that, my oldest brother died from an overdose. A couple months later, my dad almost died from an aortic dissection. All the time, I'm grieving my own loss and my own changes that happened with my diagnosis and prognosis, and having to totally shift and pivot in my life. And my if we're going to use a COVID phrase, there is no return to normal for me. That's over. Grieving that loss, grieving the loss of my life and where I saw it was going. And I want to start with just kind of talking about my brother, and talking about the last couple of times that I saw my brother. My oldest brother is 12 years older than me. By the time I was born, he was smoking weed and drinking, and by the time that I was any type of person and could think and observe for myself, he was in his active addiction. And I only knew him healthy, sober, when he was at a residential place in New Haven called, at the time it was called Turning Point, and it's called Turnbridge now. And then he relapsed and spent the last 7 years of his life basically being homeless in around central Connecticut, in and out of detoxes, 30, 60, 90-day programs, in and out of hospitals for various health reasons. So with that being said, I lost my brother. I lost Brendan far before he was ever dead. I lost him to his addiction, and I mourned that. And it's very weird to mourn somebody who's still alive. Mourning that relationship and the potential for that relationship and the potential of my brother. So the last time I saw my brother alive was at probably a year before he actually passed, somewhere around there. And 6 months to a year before he actually passed. And for the last year and months kind of leading up to that, my parents were starting to take a stand and starting to see how their relationship with my brother was being a detriment to not only to him and his recovery, but also to themselves, especially my mom. You know, as a parent and as a mother, like, I can't even imagine, you know, seeing this being that you've spawned and grown, you know, and helped grow and put so much love and energy and attention into, and seeing that person in so much pain. I can't even imagine. And my mother finally started seeing that if she continued to engage with my brother and have that relationship with my brother in the way that she had been, she was going to kill herself inside out, you know? Same thing with my dad. And so she was starting to see a therapist, specifically somebody who knew about addiction, substance abuse. Reaching out to all of these different support groups, all of these different mothers of other people whose kids are in recovery or active addiction. Staying strong, right? When Brendan called her up, she would ignore him. When he texted her, she would ignore him, and she would call up these supports and started really flexing those boundary muscles and really implementing that sometimes love is no. That no is sometimes love. She was really starting to do that, and I was so happy and supportive of that. You know, part of me was like, it's taking you long enough, right? But the fact that she even got there was just I was so happy about. So I was living in New Mexico and I came back to New England to visit. And I was there about a week, and that last day that I was there, I had a flight around like 4 a.m. I had to leave around 4 a.m. So I got back home. I went to sleep at 12. And at 2 a.m, I was woken up by banging on our front door, yelling outside, didn't know what was going on. Our dog started going crazy. You know, me and my dad jump out of bed, adrenaline going, like, all right, let's, you know, my dad got his baseball bat. I was ready to go. Coming down the stairs, and we just see my brother peering through the windows in our front door, yelling, screaming. And he's covered in blood. Covered in blood from his head down. Shirt covered in blood, face covered in blood. And just yelling for my mom. and yelling about needing to go to the hospital and how he needs help and how he's hurting and he's in pain. And it was so clear that this was such a manipulation, right? For him to get to Hartford to Manchester, he had to pass like 3 hospitals. But that didn't stop the pain from seeing this person that we love so damaged and hurting themselves. And I knew that this was a moment for my parents to really put into practice what they had been learning, putting these boundaries, saying no. And, I told my dad, go talk to him, see what he wants, don't open the door. I'm going to go upstairs with mom and keep her locked down, and I'm going to call the police. And we're going to call the police and get him arrested for trespassing. And if he comes back, we're going to get him arrested for trespassing again. He can't show up at the house. This is a part of no means love. And my dad went and talked to him and told him, said, hey, we're calling the police. You have to leave. My brother is yelling and screaming. He needs to go to the hospital. He's hurt. The hospital isn't, the Manchester hospital is very walking distance for our house. And my dad, had to tell him, like, guy, like, this is what it is. This is where we've gotten to. Went upstairs and I was with my mom and dad in their bedroom and the dogs, and I was on the phone with the police, and we're trying to keep everybody calm, and my brother's outside yelling and screaming, banging on the doors and going to all entrances of our house to try and get in, just screaming in so much pain. And finally, the cops show up, we see the lights, and Brendan's quiet, nowhere to be found. Me and my mom go outside and to meet the cop, start talking to the cop, and the moment that my mom opens up her mouth and that my brother can hear her from wherever he's hiding, he came out of the dark and beelined for her. The cops intercepted him. I intercepted my mom, brought her inside, because I knew that the moment that they connected, it was just going to be over. And that's not blaming my mom, and that's not villainizing my brother. That's the nature of that relationship, that enmeshment and that enabling and manipulation. That's just the nature of it. And I had to stand there with my mom, and she's on the verge of tears, right? She's barely holding it together. Her baby's outside. Her baby's in pain. Her baby's crying. Her baby is calling for her. And she knows that what she needs to do to help him is to stay away, to not go out and hold him, and to fight every single paternal, maternal, every instinct that she has. And that's what's going to be beneficial for him. And so we worked the cop and, said, all right, we'll take him to the hospital if he's willing to go with us. If he's not willing to go, there isn't anything that we can do. We can book him. We can put a no trespassing no trespassing on your house, this address, your places of work. But if he shows up again, you have to call the police. You have to call the police. And, it's just about continuing to get him booked, and hopefully he'll get into jail, and maybe that will turn him around. We would talk to the cop about this, and, hearing my brother outside still, trucking over the cops, trying to get into our house, trying to yell at my mom. And eventually, they book him. They took him away. They brought him to the police station, and me and my mom got together after they left and debriefed, and for a lot of it, I just held her. We just hugged and felt that pain and felt all of that grief and that mourning and that pain. And there are so many components to it, right? It's not only the damage that is so apparent in my brother, and the hurt that is so apparent in my brother, but also the fact that we see him as this beautiful person. We know his potential. He, out of me and Brian and Brendan, he had the most potential. He was so charismatic, so personable. He was the type of person who could just go up to anyone and be friends with them, and that person would be like, I love Brendan, for no reason. Brendan was the person who could tell somebody, say, hey, I think that this is a great idea. We should go do that. And that person would be like, not only is it a great idea, but I want to do it. Not because you told me, but because I want to do it. That was the power that he had. Good and bad. Good and bad. You know, he used that a lot to feed his addiction. Mourning and grieving, all of these different things. And we talked about it, and I was so proud of my mom, so proud of her for doing that hard thing, that tough love, that no is love, and doing it and staying strong. And I was so glad to be a part of that, because honestly, I don't know if my parents, once again, this is not a criticism of them at all, it's the nature of the relationship, this is how it goes. I don't know if they would have the strength or the muscle memory to do it if it was just for them. And I was so glad to be there to help them through this, so that, you know, they got over that hurdle. They had that support to support themselves. And I was so proud of her. And I spent the next fucking hour after the police left. I went around the house and I cleaned up my brother's blood from the entrances, from the sidewalks. He had a car at our house that was filled with his stuff. And I said, Mom and Dad, I'm going to go and pack up all of these clothes and get them all together so that we can just drop it off somewhere, that he has no excuse to come back. He has no excuse to be here. He has no excuse for us to call the police on him again. And I went through that car and I found needles and heroin baggies. I found another backpack covered with clothing covered in blood from some other incident that happened. I found weapons, makeshift weapons. I found so many things that everything that I found just showed how my brother was living and the pain of that life. And I had to throw away the weapons, dispose of the needles properly, take all of his clothes, put it in these bags, and give it to my parents and say, here, here's his stuff. And then go to the airport and get on a flight, couple hour flight back to New Mexico and go to work the next day. And up until that point, when I got to the terminal, I was running on adrenaline. I was, crisis management. We're dealing with what's here now, the next 10 minutes, that's it. And I was in the terminal fighting back tears, just being so overwhelmed with what was going on. And being on that plane, looking like a crazy person to the person who's going to sit next to me, because I got on that plane and I couldn't hold it together and I started bawling. Boarding this airplane, this man walks up to me, slides into the seat next to me, and I'm just sitting there, tears streaming down my face, snot running down my nose. Because I couldn't not feel it. I couldn't not feel that grief. And I didn't realize that was going to be the last time that I saw my brother until January 2020, when once again we had a unannounced visitor at our door at 2 a.m. And this time it was the police. And this time it was the police telling us that they got a call. Somebody reporting an overdose. The ambulance got there and there was nothing that they could do. They couldn't save him. And as anyone knows who's a loved one or themselves in active addiction or recovery, like, you know that this life kills people. It's a terminal illness. But you never think it's going to happen to you. You're always surprised. And for me, when I found out that my brother had died, I didn't mourn his loss because I already lost my brother. The person who died once was my brother and had the potential to be. But ultimately it was his addiction. That was, that was what was there. And I think that my brother, he was there too. And he was hurting inside that place. But I didn't mourn his loss. I mourned and am mourning the potential that was lost. My brother doesn't get to ever be clean. He doesn't ever get to be in recovery. He doesn't ever get to attempt to be healthy, to rebuild, regardless if he was going to or not. It's off the table. And for me, that was such a huge part of my mourning process, of just knowing that possibility was entirely gone. And also the possibility that my parents got a chance to heal while he was still alive was gone. Seeing how their healing and their own recovery and their working on themselves and implementing their boundaries and saying, no, I need to say yes to myself. I need to take myself into consideration here. They never got a chance to see how that was beneficial, not only to them, but to my brother. Those possibilities were gone. And the reason I bring this up is not to say woe is me and complain and make you feel bad about, the losses that I've experienced. I bring this up to illustrate how complex grief is and how mourning and grieving and losing can happen even before that thing is actually gone. And that part of that process is taking the responsibility as an individual to help that person or that thing to live on further. When I was at Turnbridge for my internship, working with all of these young men, late teens, early 20s, who are facing this terminal illness, whether that is substance abuse or serious depression and suicidal ideation. And I used my brother as an example, both as a success story, getting to know my brother when he was working his recovery and being mindful of his recovery and being present in the here and now and doing what he needed to do to be healthy. And also as a cautionary tale for this is what happens when you aren't mindful, when you stop taking your recovery seriously, when all of these things happen. It's a terminal illness. It can kill you, and you will be dead. And that is how I use my brother and his story and the grief and the mourning that I experience in a constructive way. And I do this with my own life every single day. My goal and the thing that I am most concerned about with dying isn't dying. It's not the loss of my life. That is a very big component of it. It's not being present for that. It's not being present for my death. It's not being present for at my death with the people that I love and that I am going to surround myself with, and that my friends and my family and the people that I love and the strangers that I've made connections with, being present to those people. And for all of those people, they're mourning me. They're mourning their loss of me in their lives. And I talk to my friends and my family about this, and they tell me, I'm going to miss you when you're gone. I'm going to miss knowing somebody that knows me so well. They're mourning me. And every single day, I'm mourning them. I'm not just losing one person, I'm losing everything. I'm losing this beautiful, beautiful world. I'm losing those friends and families that I love. I'm losing my dog, which you think I'm tearing up now. Oh, that's as much as I can think about that subject. I'm mourning the loss of everything in my life. And I know that if I don't do that now, if I'm not mindful of that and take that step every single day, that at the end, when I really truly am dying, I will be so overwhelmed with that loss that I won't be able to be present, that I won't be able to embrace the moment that with the people that are around me. And I don't want that. I take the time every single day to mourn what I'm going to lose. I love the spring. The spring is my favorite season. The new birth, the energy that is moving in that way, my birthday, lacrosse season, the colors that happen, the flowers, the budding of the trees, the birds coming back, the animals coming back. I love spring. And every time I take a walk with my dog now, I'm in that moment and I'm saying that this is the last spring. This is one of the last springs that I will ever experience. This is the last time I get to see this tree bloom. This is the last time I get to see this squirrel taunt my dog. And that sadness and that grief that I feel makes that moment and makes that observation and make that experience that much more powerful for me. And it brings me joy And that sounds like such a paradox. That sounds like, how is that immense loss bringing you happiness and joy? And being with that in that moment and sitting with that grief, sitting with that loss, and talking to my friends and family, and seeing the people that I worked with at Turnbridge, and seeing the guys on the lacrosse team, and knowing that this is going to be the last time that I see them ever, or maybe the last time that I see them ever. I have to feel that sadness, in the same way that I had to feel that grief when my brother left when the police came and left with him, and I had to just be there with my mom, and we had to feel that pain. I had to feel that pain. I have to feel that pain, because I know that if I take it and I put it in a box and I say, "Oh, no, I'm not dying. There's going to be new treatments for me. I'm going to live. I'm going to do all this stuff." And if I disregard that reality, I know that it's going to come back to me, and come back in a way that I don't want it to. And that will take away from me being present at the end of my life in the way that I want to be. The other thing that it illustrates to me, and this is something that I wish I could impart to everyone, without the cancer, without the terminal cancer diagnosis. You don't need that. But knowing that these moments are my last, and having that depth of that grief, that joy and that happiness comes from a place of knowing that this moment is the most important thing to me. Time is immensely valuable to me, but this moment is the most important thing, and the reason that it's important is because I'm in that moment. Everything that I do is important and valuable and a priority because I'm doing it. And that doesn't mean coaching. That doesn't just mean things that are constructive or productive or whatever, but sitting down and watching TV, or just hanging out with a friend and just shooting the shit. Every single moment of mine is important because I'm there. If I didn't think it wasn't important, I wouldn't do it. Believe me, I would not do it. There's a reason I haven't been to the dentist since I have gotten diagnosed. And that's something that I wish I could impart to people. And talking to the guys on my team, right? I help coach primarily the JV. And I'm here and I'm coaching because this is important to me. The fact that I'm giving the last few years of my life, the time that I have, to these kids, to show them a sport that they're not going to play forever. They're not going to be professional lacrosse players. And I wish that I could impart to them how important those moments are. That this is it. And maybe that would connect with one or two kids, and they would capitalize on it and say, "I'm here." And it's difficult with kids of that age because they're going to live forever. They're invincible. And I wish I could impart that to everyone. And that also goes with that grieving process, that losing process, that mourning process. The fact that you're feeling that here and now is the most important thing. by taking that and putting it in a box and saying, I'm saving it for later. It's invalidating. In the same way that sometimes hope is invalidating. Every time, not every time, but a lot of the times I talk to people, even my the people in my immediate family, tell them I have cancer, a terminal cancer diagnosis, and I get, oh, you're so young, you'll live, you'll be fine, you'll live. Or, oh, there's treatments out there, getting new clinical trials every day, you're gonna live, you're gonna be fine. I had a nurse tell me this the other day. She said, oh, you're young, you're gonna be fine. You have many more years than they tell you. And I appreciate the sentiment. I get the idea. And that's also invalidating the reality, right? The reality of my life is that I only have a couple of years. I just turned 27. When I told my doctor I was turning 27, he said, we're going to get you to 30. He didn't say, oh, there's going to be a clinical trial coming out in the next couple of years. You'll make it to 35. Don't you worry. He said, we're going to get you to 30. If I live my life and I take that advice and say, yeah, I'm young, I have clinical trials, I'm going to live forever, then that's taking me out of the moment. That is taking me out of those places. I don't need to mourn because that hope is there. Oh, I'm putting that my energy in that hope. I don't need to mourn because I'm going to live. In the same way that you don't need contraceptive education if you're teaching abstinence only. Abstinence only, if you're not having sex, you don't need to know how to use a condom. And that's what hope is for me. Hope is abstinence only. Abstinence only sex education. And that totally invalidates the reality of the situation. The reality is that teenagers are going to have sex. You better sure as hell teach them how to use condom, how to use contraceptives, how to be safe and smart. And the reality for me is that I'm going to die. Everyone's going to die, but it's more acute for me. And having that reality and accepting that reality and moving from a place of radical acceptance, total acceptance, is the only way that I can move forward. Is the only way that I feel congruent as a person. So that's my cancer allyship recommendation. Be very careful about that, what toxic hope you're putting out there, that toxic positivity that you're putting out there. Of course I hope and want to live. Of course I hope there's a clinical trial. Of course I hope that my age is going to be a benefit to me. And also, that's not necessarily the case. And if I live in that place, I'm damaging myself from being present and being here now. I want to wrap this up here before I kind of talk about, my cancer diagnosis update and what's going on with me moving forward. But there's a quote from Keanu Reeves. Keanu Reeves is an amazing individual. If you don't know about his life and the losses and challenges that he has faced, and also the stories about his humility and humanity, go look it up. There's hundreds of them out there. But Stephen Colbert was interviewing Keanu Reeves, and Stephen Colbert asked him, he said, Keanu Reeves, what do you think happens after we die? And Keanu Reeves took a moment, and he responded by saying, all I know is that the people who love us will miss us. And it's as simple as that. I don't know what happens when I die. I can't tell you that I'm going to meet you again in heaven or reincarnation or any of those things. I have my personal beliefs and my personal hopes and wants. But I can't tell you that. But I think that what Keanu Reeves said was such profound truth, that the ones that love us will miss us. And it's about how they miss us and how we move forward without physically being here, how we move forward in the lives of others, and how our impact has changed others. I know I said that I'm going to wrap up here. I got one more thing. This is perfectly illustrated in the Pixar movie Coco. It's about the afterlife. It's about Day of the Dead. It's a great movie. I highly recommend it. But there's this notion that there's a second death after people forget about you and stop talking about you. So there's the land of the living and the land of the dead. And the land of the dead is populated by people who are dead, but in the land of the living, they have, their pictures on their altars, and it's about Day of the Dead, and the cultural aspects that go along with that. And you see in the movie that the individuals who are living in the land of the dead, when they are forgotten and when people no longer remember them, they disappear and they go on to wherever they go on to. And so for me, I talk about my brother all the time. And for a while after he died, I kind of corrected myself of saying, I have a brother. And I go, I had a brother. I had a brother. And now I'm working on correcting myself back. I have a brother. I have two brothers. One of them is just dead. The other one is here, but I have two brothers. And Brendan is with me every single day because I'm still here. And because I carry his influence in me. And I talk about him. And I share his story with people. And I grieve him every single day. And I grieve him when I do that. And that is how I grieve him. Is sharing. So that's it. I'm going to wrap up here. For me, moving forward, like I said at the end of my other video, I had a couple of scans, and they showed that my cancer moved into my liver, or moved further into my liver. I have a new tumor there that is not being treated by my chemo. So they took a scan, and basically that scan was just to show if that's the only spot or if there was more. And there were more spots. I have 2 lymph nodes up near my heart and lungs that are cancerous. Luckily, they are not. They could tell in the scan that they aren't super aggressive. They don't have. They're not metabolizing very fast, so they shouldn't spread. So what we're going to move forward with is a targeted treatment for the one in my liver. So they're going to basically burn out that tumor to remove it, and I'm going to continue with the chemotherapy that I'm doing right now, and they're just going to kind of keep an eye on the stuff up near my heart and lungs. Because at this point, it's about trying to buy me time and prolong the treatments as long as they can. So even though my chemo might be losing its effectiveness, by doing that targeted treatment, I can stay on my chemo that's still working and working relatively well for longer. And so it is this very unique balancing act of, when to totally change over to a new treatment when it's not working, or when to have it continue even though we know it's not working as well as it was. So that's kind of what's going on with me. I have this procedure scheduled in a month, basically. Very simple procedure. It's an outpatient procedure. I'm going to go in, they're going to put me out, I'm going to get it done, and then I'm going to, come home and I'll be good to go. Yeah, so I wanted to kind of give that update out there. Once again, thank you for being with me here and listening. And, I really hope that, this fosters more conversations and more introspection. Please share this with people. Please send it out there. Yeah, I just have so much gratitude for everybody that has been touched by this and that has reached out and let me know and have conversations, and even the people who haven't reached out. I'm so happy that an impact is being made, and that impact can have an impact on others, and it can be a ripple effect. So thank you for being with me and listen to me talk and taking this time out of your day. Thank you so much. Mitaku Yeyoasim.